Good afternoon. That was a millennial pause there. Good afternoon. Welcome to episode number 57 of UncommonCents. Dean Holmes and Craig Kamis here to entertain you and inspire you for the next 28 minutes or so. Good afternoon to you, Craig. Welcome back. You haven't been seen for a little while.
No, good afternoon, everyone. I think I've bailed on the last two actually, which is poor form. But you know what they say, mate? Absence makes the heart grow fonder. And what it helped me realize is how much I actually miss spending this time with you every fortnight. And so today I cleared everything and said, everyone get out of the way. I need to go and hang out with my mate Dean. And let me apologise to the listeners for us being 1 minute late. I was having a rant that we're not going to rant online about. So if you want to hear that rant, Bentley particularly, you might need to slide into my DMs and I'll tell you about that later. But I apologise for our 1 minute of tardiness.
Very good. Thank you, Craig. So today we're having a little bit of a chat about innovation, but specifically around a case study that you've personally experienced. Now, we keep going on about this story about learning from other industries or learning from other professionals and what can we take from those experiences into our financial planning business. And so Craig Kamis has had an experience with Nespresso recently. And so shout out to Nespresso for sponsoring this podcast today and sending Craig some complimentary Rossetto pods. But Craig, you've changed back to Nespresso. Tell us your journey.
Mate, so yeah, many moons ago, like lots of people, I guess, when Nespresso first put out their machines and their little capsules, that was there was a bit of a wave of popularity, and I was on that wave myself. But as my coffee taste developed and matured, and my interest in coffee developed and matured, I moved away from them because I found it a little bit watery, and maybe the pour was a little bit too long, and all of those type of things. The coffee nerds listening will get what I'm talking about. If others don't, you just go and get your flat white and you're happy. That's fine too. But I just didn't like it, and so I went and invested in a much more expensive machine, probably almost triple the price, with my own beans, and had been doing my own thing for a number of years, and absolutely adore that machine and love that machine. To the only defect that it had is that my darling wife didn't want to use it. Didn't want to, didn't feel comfortable, couldn't get the same coffee out of it that I could for her. And because my role requires me to travel quite regularly, then the Kamis household coffee budget would go up every time I left, because she would then go and get it from the coffee shop, Dean, rather than the home machine. So that produced a dilemma, and I wasn't actually even thinking of solving it until my mother-in-law, who was an Nespresso fan, said, I need a new Nespresso machine. Can you go and get me one? And whilst I was there for her, maybe a tiny bit of FOMO kicked in, like shiny new toys, something new. But I learned at that point that Nespresso had actually done a whole heap of innovation. And because I'd blocked it out of my mind and went, never going back there, sticking to this, I'd never realised the amount of innovation that they'd done. Not even George Clooney could convince me of the innovation that they'd potentially done. But
so some of this innovation, Craig, is coffee-related innovation, but also like market or competitive innovation as well. So we know that the coffee pods themselves, maybe like pharmaceuticals, it was under a little bit of an IP and trademark. The pod, and then at some point in time, everyone realized they could make pods that were Nespresso machine compatible, and then a little bit later, I think you were able to make machines that almost looked and felt like a Nespresso machine. And so that's like, assuming that's all legal, Craig, it's okay to copy other people. So if they've got a really good idea, that's happened for years in terms of different brands coming in and going, they're doing really well in that market. I'm just going to try to be number 2 or number 3 in that market and take a small slice of the pie. So we knew that, or we saw that there was a need to innovate if they wanted to maintain the quality, I suppose, Craig, of what was coming out of the coffee machine. So what was the next step?
Yeah, so the next step was, and I don't know, if you haven't visited, if you like a well-constructed store, go and visit an Nespresso boutique. because they actually have done it very well. You can taste whatever coffee you want. It's presented well. You have to walk past the machines and everything's shiny first. They make you a coffee, they can sell you stuff. So they've actually constructed their store well. But the innovation point, Dean, is if we just the old capsule, which most people will know, the machines that they went in had two different functions for how much liquid it poured, and that was it. And it was the only one. Where now what they've done is they've developed a new capsule that are all an array of different sizes, and they've actually barcoded these capsules that the new machine actually reads, and then that the machine knows when it reads the barcode whether it should be 25 mils of liquid, whether it should be 150 mils of liquid, depending on the capsule it's got and the coffee it's got.
And importantly, the barcode does two things, doesn't it, Craig?
It does do two things. One, it tells the machine what to do, but secondly, it becomes near impossible to copy. And so therefore creates a new market for Nespresso that other entrants can't get into in terms of that particular pod, and trying to replicate that.
Until we can hack into your machine, which, as I understand, is relatively easy because now the coffee machine is also connected to the internet.
It is, absolutely. It's connected to the home Wi-Fi. It talks to my phone. It tells me errors. It tells me different things that need to occur. If I need to clean my machine, I have to do it through my phone, not through a button on my machine. Like I need to prep it up. So it's quite interesting in that way. But where they've taken this technology, Dean, is that the coffee now pours perfectly consistently. And I've now got 5 weeks of history on this. Every single morning, that coffee pours exactly the same, which I know with my other machine I love dearly manually, depending on atmospheric pressure, weather, all those sort of things. Sometimes it wouldn't pour the same every single morning. So that was coffee nerd again, sorry. But
well, I was wondering why you don't live in Melbourne, to be honest, because obviously
well, Adelaide is really the coffee capital of the Australia, mate.
Oh, well, there you go. I haven't got the memo, so good to know.
Yeah, just so you know. But they've developed a product now that is more like the coffee we drink out of coffee shops. Is more like the coffee that the more manual machines could produce, and it's very consistent. And they've obviously worked with Breville and all the others who make their machine to even get the milk process. Because one of the other reasons I moved from Nespresso was I didn't like that milk thing they had that frothed the milk. It was never frothy enough. Like, it wasn't smooth and silky enough. It was never hot enough or whatever. They've now designed some of their new machines with a proper steam wand and jug, and it does an impeccable job of the milk every single time.
Very good. Very
good. All right. Dave, Mrs. Kamis can now make
a perfect coffee every time. Works 100% of the time, all of the time. Yeah. So let's break down a couple of interesting things. So the first thing that you spoke about your experience, and so coming to see your financial advisor, whether it is digitally or physically, is an experience. And so the experience that you have had when you walked into the store, and I put maybe you put Nespresso and Apple in a similar experience, i.e. what's in the store that you can see versus what is not in the store, i.e. in the back of the store. But I think it's really important to reflect on what is the client experience when they arrive. Okay. So the idea of, if you like, I had one client when we were transitioning offices, we were in like a WeWork for 9 months between our two offices. And so one of my old clients, his doctor, came in, he came up to the level and he just didn't know what to do. The experience didn't match what he was expecting. And there was a bar over there, people drinking beer. There's no reception. There's an iPad. And so whilst that might be your thing, don't let it be your thing unless you've thought through that particular part of the process and then changed it if necessary. So I think it's really good learning, Craig, of going, I had a great experience in an Nespresso store. And what were the elements of the service that you had in the store that you'd like to replicate or could replicate in an office environment?
This is a great question and so easy to answer. Like, we didn't prep this one for those listening along at home. Like, Dee's just hit me with that, but I can, without even having to think, I can tell you exactly. So number one, it was clean, tidy, and very presentable. So you walked in and you felt calm, not cluttered, not, relaxed. Like it was just a nice environment to be in because of that cleanliness. It's organized, the way it's set up and that type of thing. Number two was the actual welcome from a human being. Right? Like and that doesn't matter at what part it happens, whether I went up to an iPad, and I'll give you an example in a minute of two very different Nespresso stores, because some of their boutiques have innovated a bit further. But the person who welcomed me was really welcoming, and not like, please don't talk to me, I don't want to buy something, that kind of vibe. It was just sort of like almost like welcome to my home kind of welcome. And like, if I can help you, I can. If not, I'll let you do your thing, sort of thing. So that was really important. And I think, so let's link that to a financial planning firm, Dean. Like, does your reception area look like a dentist's office, or is it somewhere that feels more welcoming and fresh and has that feel that people are going to feel like they're home when they walk in there?
Correct. And how thinking about how you have to check that the next time you walk into your office, wherever that is, you have to walk in like you're a client. So clients walk in slower. They're more observing of the surrounding because maybe it's the first or second time they've been there, and they have to sit in those chairs you've had for 20 years in reception. And so my call out for the physical advisors here is sit in that reception chair and see what you can see from sitting down, which is different from what you see when you walk through it every day, because you're walking through your reception with purpose. You're either going into a meeting room or going into to your desk, for example. So taking the time to sit down there and then sit down and go, wow, there's lots of papers on the reception desk, or I can actually see the bin or the recycle bin from where I'm sitting. Like, we didn't know that because we didn't sit down.
Paint is chipping off the bottom.
Yeah.
I never
can see it from the bottom. All those 20-year-old chairs, Craig, might need a refresh. So we don't need the Harbour Bridge views in terms of the glass window to impress people. We just need to do the minimum so that there's no friction and it looks calm. So you can build the home feeling and like, welcome to my home, here's our reception. Or you can build guess what, you can see the Harbour Bridge, and most people go, well, I know what I'm paying for in terms of that. But the taking the time to build that experience and just be aware of it. And so that's one thing everyone can do, is go through that experience. Digitally, Craig, I don't have all the answers to this, but it's something that I'm working on at the moment, is to be cognizant of how the client experience is as they come through into the meeting room, and what happens immediately. Because the idea that you're like, oh, you're on mute, I'm on mute, can you see me? Is my screen being shared? All of that, while some of it is necessary, just creates a little bit of friction.
Yeah, and but mate, again, I think you're spot on. It's about how does it feel welcoming. Like I've deliberately set this up like this, so I don't have to have a background.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't want to disappear into it or out of it, and all of those type of things. And there's probably talking points. You and I have done that sometimes. There's different talking points back there that get people interested.
I told you to drink that whiskey that
drink that whiskey that's there, right?
Tim Scott and I, we need to drink that whiskey with you. That was the thing I discovered last time. But okay, that's the experience. Absolutely, Craig. So let's take the next thing, Craig, and talk about their pricing and customer retention. Put that into one category: client retention, client service. What are they doing differently around selling you the machine?
Yep.
With the value extras, and how excited are you by that?
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing to know is the price of the Nespresso machines in the Nespresso boutique. If you're buying them up front, you'll probably get it cheaper somewhere else.
Okay.
Right. And I actually,
but it's the same brand. Like, it's still
exactly the same brand.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe the same, but the other retailers will probably and more than likely be able to sell these cheaper, right? And I asked them the question, why would I buy that machine from here if I'm just buying it outright full price versus going somewhere else? And they said, well, if you get it somewhere else, you still need to register it with Nespresso, and it still needs to be done for warranty and all those type of things. And you'd have to do that yourself. If you get it here, you'll walk out of here with that registered, sorted, under control, everything will be done.
Yep.
However, we actually don't really want you to buy the machine outright, Craig, we'd like you to look at this plan. And I guess it depends on what level machine you're looking at. So the machine I was looking at for home here was, I don't know, I think it was $1,800 or something, right? But they said to me, we've got an option here which might be enticing to you. And I said, okay, what's that? So you can pay $600 up front for the machine today.
Mm.
And then $100 a month.
Yep.
Each month for the next, I don't know, 12 months or 15 months, or I'm not getting that detail right, but.
Oh, you work in finance. The financial advisors are about to do a discounted cash flow of this, Craig.
So it might have been either the next 12 months or 2 years or something like that, right? Which you sit back and go, well, if I do that, then I'm going to pay more for the machine. And they said, no. What you need to understand is every time that $100 comes out, that appears as credit in your Nespresso account. So you can use that credit to buy our coffee pods, our coffee machines, our accessories, our chocolates, anything that you could buy in Nespresso, you can use that credit for. And I went, oh, that's interesting. And I went, okay, here's catch number 2. So if I don't use all of my $100 in that first month, what happens to it? Oh, it just rolls over to the next month. So if you wanted to, Craig, you could actually let it all build up and buy another machine. Or you could spend $100 a month on stuff, and therefore, so effectively what they were saying is if you think you can spend $100 a month, or you want to let it settle up and buy something else, once that term's expired, you've still only ever paid $600 for the machine. Yeah. But they've locked you in.
Correct. They obviously didn't give you a financial services guide for this, Craig.
Yeah.
Look, this is a really interesting retention strategy to learn from and work out how we can, translate that into our businesses. But the idea that they're not necessarily losing on the machine. Maybe the cost price of the machine is $600.
Yeah.
But what they're happy to do is retain you as a customer for the next 24 months, which is the key, because they know that they will have innovated over that 24 months to have an even better machine. And you're going to have a better experience along the way because you're incentivized to drink their coffee. So even when the competitor comes out, Craig, with the disc and the barcode matching software, for example, you're going to look at that and go, sure, I can get the coffee pod for 30 cents less as a result, but I've got the machine on a good deal. I've got this payment plan that I go in and get my coffee every month or so. You're a customer for life now.
Yeah. No, and it's spot on. And it's not about, what's the catch or what's this or what's that. It's very clear and they take you through it really clearly. But again, it all linked back to that whole experience of, you know what, like if I do it here, I feel some sense of exclusivity.
Yep.
And I feel a real sense of professionalism. And I feel a real sense of, I know how this machine works. I've decided to work for Nespresso. I am backing this and I'm going to show you how it works and how it feels versus standing in another showroom where there's millions of different machines. Some are working, some aren't. They can't show you all the features. And they're just kind of like, which one do you want? Take the box, get out.
Yeah, well, they can't even. I bought my own machine, which is the same as yours, I think, online. Yep. The Oracle, for those that really want to know. Craig and I both have an Oracle. You don't even try it. Like there's very little training that goes in. Now, some would say you don't need a lot of training, but there's very little training that goes in. And yes, you don't get to have that experience. So they've definitely, whilst we have a good coffee culture in Australia, they've definitely made the experience of making the decision to move away from instant coffee into this very easy.
Although Moccona still does advertise on TV, I noted last night, which
I would say
blows my mind, Dean. But I remember the days of going into an advice office early on and like, would you like a coffee? And you always said no. And if you were
because you knew it was going to be
not Moccona. This is before espressos. I remember that tagline. Oh, but we have Moccona.
If you look at what the dry roasted coffee market is in Australia, you'll be blown away by how many billions of dollars it still is in this category. So it's still there, and so they're holding on to a really good market overall. because the price per teaspoon is still quite low, Craig. And so when you've done the pricing of the cafe that Mrs. Kamis buys at, and then you come down to the Nespresso, you might be at, including the machine, you might be at $2 or $1 by the time there. And so the other one is down in the cents per cup, I think. So for those budget friendly, perfect. But I must say, I've got some downstairs, and my folks drink it, and I have been known to dabble from time to time when there's an emergency. So the last thing, Craig, what does this all mean for financial planning businesses and advice practices? So I think the big thing for us as we were prepping this and thinking about your experience is wanting to innovate your own business. And so there's two categories of that. The first is to go, there are probably things that you looked at in the past that have innovated. So if you say, Craig would never touch an espresso again, but he came back and said, oh, wow, they've innovated. And the only reason why, besides his mother-in-law, is he was inquisitive. Let's go find out. So I think the first thing is there may be an opportunity for you to be inquisitive on things that you've said no to in the past so that you can just double check. You might still be right, but you might find that there's something new there that you need to do. So I think the idea of checking out other people's innovation, I think, is the first step. And then the second step inside the businesses, innovation should be a process that you plan to do either a week, a year, or constantly throughout your business. But I don't want advisors running around trying all the bright, shiny toys. That's obviously the most distracting thing that we can do. And so if we take the idea that innovation is a process, then you break it down into the 52 weeks of the year, and you decide which quarter you're going to look at one thing, and you spend a little bit of time each week looking at one thing or one category, but not deciding. So when I think about the process, Craig, is there's always a period of information seeking. At the end of a period of information seeking, you have a decision framework and you decide, and then you move into execution. What I see, so that's at least 2 quarters of activity. I see advisors doing very little research, deciding with their gut, signing up to a 12-month plan, and then realizing that it's really hard to integrate that new bright, shiny toy into their existing practice. So taking it away, innovation is a process to map out the journey of what you want to look at over a 12-month period, and then doing those 2 halves of research and then execution, I think, is valuable or essential to make sure that you're doing the right by your business by not changing too much. Change fatigue is a real thing in practices as well. And so that's the other side of what we need to be aware of at this point in time.
Yeah, and change fatigue has a massive impact on your team as well. Like, you've really got to be focused on them and what you've got them doing. I don't know if people watch The Bear, which is a movie about a restaurant.
I haven't yet.
The TV series about a restaurant, but in the last, and I'm not giving away a spoiler alert, but like in the last series, so they come out, the head chef decides that every day the menu is going to be different. Right? And that change fatigue, you sit back and watch. It kills the kitchen, it kills the front of house, it kills everything in terms of how that whole place runs. So, Dean, that's a massive one to think about, not only for yourself, but how that's going to revolve right through every single person that works for you. But I also think it's remembering what you've done along the way and making sure you say to yourself that just because that wasn't right for me then doesn't mean I should recheck it now, see if they've innovated. Or even if they haven't quite innovated, but maybe I'm now at the stage where I do need that, and I just didn't need it beforehand. So kind of remembering your journey and remembering who you've spoken to along the way, and just putting them into categories of, if I ever need that, that's where that exists.
Agreed.
And not actually going, you know what, I've slammed the door on that, I'm never going to go and look at it again.
No, and that's the open attitude that we need, Craig, to make it a reality. So, yeah, very good concluding remark is just have a look at things you haven't looked at before with an open mind, but with a process, so that you don't waste time in the wrong areas without the process around it.
Yeah. Absolutely, mate. I think that's
very good. And it's only 1 o'clock for you, Craig, so you can definitely fit in another coffee before the end of the day.
I can. Excellent.
Very good. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That was episode 57. Craig Kamis will be back again in 2 weeks' time. So get ready for potentially another rant of other areas or some other chats about financial planning and business and Nespresso. So just to finally say that Nespresso was not a sponsor of this podcast in any way. Craig used his real money from his real job to buy those real coffee pods. So thank you again.